I'm a neo-reactionary absolutist. I believe in a absolute world order, organized in a particular way.
When you're looking at a government is a corporation that owns a country. It just is. It's the same thing.
I'm Peter Thiel. I support people who are building new things. I'm not a politician, but neither is Donald Trump. And it's time to rebuild America.
Anything we can do to help this go along, and we're going to be there for you. And you'll call my people, you'll call me. It doesn't make any difference. We have no formal chain of command.
In last week's episode, we learnt how Byline Times was not founded by Peter Jukes, like he likes to claim, but it was founded by a guy called Seung-Yoon Lee, who's associated with Peter Thiel, who Peter Jukes inherited the Byline Times from as it is written on the old website. We inherited a site from the founders of byline.com. We found out that a guy called Nicholas Berggruen, who's pictured here, gave almost £1 million to Byline in its early days before it became Byline Times. And we can see that he was on David Cameron's party guest list for donors with a total of £11 billion. Even one of Peter Jukes' own guests makes the distinction between founding and inheriting. Listen to this.
And your project, Unlock Democracy, is this a part of what you're working on to sort of encourage participation and trust in politics again?
Yes, although thank you for describing me as the founder of Unlock Democracy. That is not true. Unlock Democracy, in fact, the predecessor organisation was Charter 88, which was founded in 1988. So
by Anthony Barnett,
Anthony Barnett. So I'm not the founder, but what we campaign on are issues like transparency and.
So Peter Jukes fully understands and gets the point when it's told to him. I wonder if it'll make him change the way he describes himself as the founder of Byline Times. We'll see. But we're not talking about this episode. We're talking about Nicholas Berggruen and the way billionaires view the world. Lunch with Nicholas Berggruen. So this journalist had lunch with him and he gave us a bit of an insight into the way he thinks. The real world for me was a game and I wanted to work out how to function in it, to use it as a platform. We see thinking the world as a game isn't a position held singularly by Nicholas Berggruen. Elon Musk, for instance, has just overtaken Jeff Bezos in the richest man in the world. And Elon Musk tweets at Jeff Bezos a second place medal, as if to be like, haha, I'm winning now. Here we go. There's this tweet there. So if we have billionaires seeing the rich list as like a leaderboard, like you'd see on an arcade machine in a pub, for instance, it makes sense that they see the people who aren't on that leaderboard as not the winners like them, but the opposite to that, like losers. And we see that from politicians. That time Donald Trump called poor people morons. What's a synonym for moron? Loser. We had Boris Johnson said the bottom 20% of society produces chavs, losers and burglars. And we've got Boris Johnson kind of sucking up to these Silicon Valley elites through his puppet master, Dominic Cummings. So I used to play poker, which is a game. And some people think that poker is directly analogous to the way billionaires think about life. For instance, when you're playing poker, everybody has different size stacks. Some people have more chips than others, and those with the biggest stacks have more options to play, more styles of play that they can use. Whereas when you have a short stack, you might be left with one option, which is just shove all in. You can see that in action here.
This is a shovelable hand for
There's three players left in this final table of the Women's World Series of Poker, and this person in third place has got less than 10% of the largest stack, 10% of the second largest stack, and she's got a queen and an 8, which is like an average hand. However, she's got one option here, which is shove all in. She's really back against the wall here. Compare that to someone who's like losing at life, let's say, their backs are against the wall and they've got few options left, they'll probably find themselves in a food bank. Back against the wall, they're all in. They've got no money to spend on food. All their money is going onto bills, and they're just left with one option left. So not only do the people with the biggest stacks not have to go to food banks, they also get to use their stack to invest in education and other techniques that might help their poker ability. So for instance, you're able to use poker trackers, which analyzes all your opponents live in real time. So then instead of you having to watch someone play and work out how many times they raise in certain positions, how many times they fold in certain positions, you have these heads-up displays that do all that analyzing for you. And that's very analogous to the way the billionaires have used things like Cambridge Analytica to analyze our data. When I played poker, I had a notebook because I didn't really play much online. I went to casinos to play it, but I had a notebook where I had notes on practically everybody that I played against, whether that told me their playing styles and their tells and their baseline behaviors and all sorts of information that most people would probably think like, what the fuck do you need to know that for? But like, the more you know, the more you know. Billionaires are even able to use their larger stacks to pay for therapy, which has now become a hobby for the wealthy, and it's left it out of reach for those who need it. Those people who need mental health therapy are usually the vulnerable and the poor who can't actually afford it. Many of the people who this psychiatry professor has taught have not gone into treating people who need mental health help. They've gone into setting up their own private practices where they can charge up to $400 an hour, who this guy's calling the worried well. The rich are benefiting from the massive stacks that they have, where they can just collect all the resources and make sure that they get them first, and then whatever's left, whatever the scraps are, everybody else gets to fight for them through NHS waiting lists and other such welfare systems that seem to be in decline and prescribed by people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, for instance. Also, when I played poker, I turned myself into a kind of character that made me look less threatening than I actually was. So I would make myself kind of look a little ridiculous. I'd drink at the table, which is a kind of no-no for anyone who's playing poker professionally. If you see someone drinking at the table, you kind of see them as someone who's not taking it seriously. They're just there for a laugh. They're just there to enjoy themselves, and they're not at that top of the game. So if I start drinking a few drinks, obviously not getting drunk, then I have a better idea of what people think about me. So then I'm in their head, basically. Once I know what they're thinking, I'm better able to predict what they're going to do in future. And that's exactly the same kind of mentality and tactic that Cambridge Analytica use in order to manipulate people's behaviors, especially voting behaviors around elections. And that goes for these people here who create themselves into ridiculous characters to discredit themselves. And so the cognitive elite who are telling us everything that's going on can easily point to them and be like, hey, I know you're investigating these people, but look at them. They just look ridiculous. They're not serious. And that is the shield that they surround themselves in that protects them from any sort of relevant criticism. It's just instant dismissal of, oh, come on, they're idiots. They're not very serious. You can't take them seriously. Just ignore them. They're using the same tactics that I used in a game, playing poker, where all I cared about was winning. And they're doing the same thing here.
All the different moments of the banter. I thought.
We're having a serious conversation about the way that Ralph is manipulating things, and he's telling me how he's doing it while his weirdo flying monkeys are there, just to discredit the whole conversation and be like, look, he's just a fucking idiot. He's just talking bullshit. He thinks he's something, but he's not. So basically, poker is simply a game where the person who knows and understands more wins. If I'm playing against someone who our base poker abilities are exactly the same, and I understand human behavior better than they do, I'm able to take advantage of of that knowledge in that specific situation and manipulate and predict his behavior to better suit my ends and win the game. So these guys see themselves as like playable characters in a computer game. Like they'll see themselves in GTA going out and having to do certain missions and things.
You know how fast you were going?
Did they try to nab you, hacker? Did they try to nab you?
Tried to nab me on a cycling. Imagine the guy would have kicked me off my bike.
Yeah.
Completely mad. I'm going to go back in a few minutes, zoom across them. I'll keep doing guerrilla, you know.
Guerrilla tactics.
Stand on the car. Let's go. Come on.
Get out of the fucking car, you pint-sized prick!
You little shit. Get the fuck out of here. Go on.
Man, I'm sick of driving so slow staying with these fools. Can we have a real race?
Oh, you talk a good game. Okay, just don't scratch the cars.
It didn't stop him, it arrested me. Right, I'm going to go in a couple of minutes. I'm going to try and zoom through there. You want to follow?
Yeah.
I'll go slowly. And I'll zoom as fast as I can.
I'll go this way, I'll zoom in.
I'll be going to that little bit there then. But you're welcome to listen. The police are being used as political tools by a government that is imposing criminal regulation on the people.
Kind of like this, but in real life. It's basically this festival where you go and role play as someone centuries ago, and everyone has their own roles to play, and there'll be all sorts of like weird shit happening, and you might have to investigate and find out what's going on in certain plots and whatever. And it just seems like this real world version of a computer game where you can just kind of pretend what it's like to be living in whatever era they're simulating. So they call this LARPing, live action role playing. And like I say, nothing against these guys because it does look really cool, but when you start taking that into the real world,
There is
and you start kind of like going into real world situations where people are mourning, for instance, over someone who's just been murdered. It kind of shows how the lack of empathy that's needed. They're doing the similar things. They're going in to certain places. They're speaking to certain people, doing certain missions, and there's all these playable characters that are all converged on the same place to create a certain winning condition, and their winning conditions are usually chaos. Cause as much chaos which distracts from the reality, and then they have their own infiltrators that take advantage of the chaos and explain to everybody what actually happened or what their version of events was.
What do you think? I think this is pretty much staged.
Probably a good idea to quickly take a look at how our Kerbals are doing.
They see themselves as rocket scientists and astronauts, where you can literally do this in a game.
Slow. Let's just
and the fact that that Shatner can lift.
Oh,
we got the countdown happening. I'm going to quiet down.
Yeah, let's
listen in.
I mean, the graphics on this game look incredible. But then things can get even more intense when they have big gangs of people with fireworks and
by the Canadian Embassy.
Yeah. Whoa, see that one?
It's interesting how similar that footage is to things like this. This is a game called RimWorld where you just create a colony of people in like some mountains. You dig a hole and you create a house, and you just start researching certain technologies, and you just build a colony, and you have to protect it from raiders and things. When I was at that battle in Trafalgar Square, it really did feel like this kind of battle in a computer game. And then obviously it gets a bit more extreme with the explosions.
Open that up, boom, boom. There's nobody working there. There's nobody working. Oh yes, they do work at the casinos. Need to open that up. Boom.
And in these games, we can also analyze the people, the virtual people inside the simulation. So they have all sorts of statistics like health, energy, and other things. I don't really know what they are. Exactly in the same way that we can be analysed in the real world through, like I mentioned before, Cambridge Analytica and polling data. And it's got to the postmodern era where our games are collecting our data, which are then being sent off to Cambridge Analytica, who are analysing us like we analyze our virtual colonies in our games. In exactly the same way that these heads-up displays for online poker analyze your opponents in real time so that you don't have to. And here's the thing, I was playing poker for a couple of years, in fact a few years before I even realized the existence of these poker trackers. And then as soon as I did, I stopped playing for any sort of considerable money online until I at least worked out how to use this thing, because the game's rigged against people that don't know it's rigged. So I started playing at casinos where I knew there's no heads-up displays. There's no one who's got a program that can tell them exactly how I play in a casino like you can have online. And we have these in real life. We have these like Cambridge Analytica. We have social media. People can go and look you up on social media, work out what you like and what you dislike, what you fear and what you love, and then they can use that knowledge against you to the point where you're just deep in their manipulation. For instance, if you think that all cops are bastards and you're in a protest movement that's always going around all cops are bastards and you don't speak to the police, if you go and try and have a protest at a vigil, they will send people in that infiltrate it and exacerbate that ACAB mentality to the point where you're fighting with Nazis. So this is what happens when people start treating life like a game, and people who are treating life like life, where they have human emotions like caring and sharing, they get trapped in these games that they don't realize other people are playing. And in the real world terms, that leads to poverty. People who go to bookmakers to use the FOBT machines, they are having their desires of wanting to be rich or whatever used against them. They install bookmakers in the poorest areas. They don't put them in the richest areas because that's not where the money is. Like sometimes you'll get bookmakers, because they're only allowed a certain amount of fixed odds betting terminals in each shop, they'll open another shop like 2 or 3 doors down. So you'll see William Hills or Ladbrokes very close together, just so they can get around the amount of gaming machines they're allowed in their offices, Because obviously if they've got an office and they're only allowed 2 machines and they're always in use, then they need to expand their business, but they're not allowed more than 2 in each shop, so they'll just open another shop two doors down the road, which doesn't show a care for society and the people that they're getting hooked on their Kool-Aid. It shows a care for their own profits at whatever cost to society. Because these billionaires treat the world like a game and they already believe that we're living in a simulation, it gives them zero incentive to switch on their empathy, because they can do that. But for psychopaths, it's a choice. And if they believe that everybody is just some sort of digital assets and virtual non-playable character, then they don't feel the need to switch on that empathy. They seem to have a switch they can turn on and off that turns their empathy on and off depending on the situation. The findings suggest psychopaths are in fact capable of empathy if they consciously control it. This ability may explain why a psychopath can be charming in one instant and brutal the next, the researchers say. So they have no incentive to see people as the humans that they are, but because they believe that we're living in this simulation, they see people beneath them as deserving of their place, losers, non-playable characters, pawns on a chessboard. And they gloat at the way that they attempt to make everyone do what they're supposed to be doing.
All the different moments of the
Banter.
I thought.
So just like the thousands of people who died in the building of the Panama Canal, and those responsible for the deaths, responsible for the project, they will have felt very little sadness for the loss of life. As little sadness as a kid playing a computer game where his colony's just been
Maybe
destroyed.
they just got nicer bedrooms. Because whenever someone is like, oh, come on, how bad could a random event be in RimWorld? This is what I show them. I'm just like, you have no idea how bad it gets.
Like this guy's just lost all his colony. He's probably spent
Both my
hours
food
and
was
hours
setting on
building
fire
this
and
colony.
shit. And I love
some
that it's
random
happening
event
during a dry thunder.
has just destroyed it to the point where he's got 2 colonists left and one of them is dying. And his whole thing's on fire. I mean, he seems upset, but probably upset in the sense that he's put his own personal time. He's not upset for the virtual characters in there. He's upset at his own shit. So if someone destroyed the Panama Canal, that would get the owners upset. I don't think they're upset at the loss of life that went into creating the Panama Canal. So this is basically the mind of a psychopath, and capitalism is breeding more of them, ever more selfish, ever more entitled, and ever more warped into a mind that has become so logical that it has begun to lack common sense, the common sense of love and empathy. Check this from Ayn Rand. Since time immemorial and pre-industrial, greed has been the accusation hurled at the rich by the concrete-bound illiterates who were unable to conceive of the source of wealth or of the motivation of those who produce it. The rules of the game of life need changing. To see people who don't have money as illiterates and those who do as not is a complete manipulation of the way that she wants us to see the world. Like I said at the start, Elon Musk tweeted at Jeff Bezos a second place medal after he overtook him in the rich list. He overtook him by $20 billion. He's richer than him. He's £20 billion richer than him. That's more money than... He's richer than him by everybody in the world's wealth, apart from a few hundred who have more than 20 billion. He could give that 20 billion away. He could create 20 more billionaires and still be as rich as he was yesterday. And if we think about Peter Thiel, Elon Musk's friend Peter Thiel has a fellowship where he offers people $100,000 to quit university and join his fellowship. 20 billion, that can afford an army of 200,000 people in Peter Thiel's fellowship. You might think that that's ridiculous. They would never give £100,000 away to that many people, 200,000 people, but that's the exact model PayPal was built on. They monopolized the idea first by making it into a massive losing business. As soon as someone opened an account, they said, recommend us to a friend and we'll give you both $5. Everybody started sending money to each other and recommending, to the point where Musk and Thiel and the PayPal mafia, they can't afford to keep giving out these $5. So they were asking for investment, where people were like, well, this is genius. You're going to have a monopoly on the market, and then eventually you will eventually get your money back. So to suggest that they wouldn't spend that extra 20 billion that they don't need on an army of 200,000 people monopolizing society in their image, to suggest that they're not doing that because it's ridiculous, is slightly naive. I don't know if they're doing that. I don't know exactly what every single member of Peter Thiel's fellowship is doing, but I bet you that they're acting on behalf of Peter Thiel. They'll be spreading good, positive messages about him, and they'll be trying to distract and shut down any negative information about him out there. We've got to the point where we need to change the rules of the game of life. The billionaire list should be a list of shame, and a list of exploiters, a list of greed, a list of people who are responsible for the chaos we see in today's society. And any gesture of giving up their wealth when they die is just not good enough. It's like, yeah, I recognize that I'm exploiting now, but tough shit, I'm not going to do anything about that until I die. I'm used to this life. I'm entitled to this life. You're not going to take it from me. But when I die, then yeah, end billionaires when I die. Nah, we need to do it now, and we need to do it before we gaslight the nation. In fact, we need to do it before we gaslight the world anymore. Peter Jukes had his model right for the hacking trial. He asked you for help to fund his reporting, and you gave it to him. His mistake was letting a new set of cognitive elites get their claws into him. I won't fall for the same ego stroking Jukes did. In fact, I will ask for the exact same thing he did. If you can fund me to the tune of $2,000 a month, and I can make this my full-time job, considering the surveillance I was under in London has made me unable to do my career job, I'm kind of all eggs in one basket kind of right now. I will be making regular content from now on, at least one video a week. I'll be live reporting on protests, and once I'm more comfortable with my new setup, I'll hopefully live stream some documentaries and see if we can get into some live debates and interviews. Money donated will buy you no special privileges, and I will cap it at $2,000 per month if possible. I'm not much of a consumer. I don't ask for much. Thanks to everybody who's supported me so far. I honestly never wanted to turn this into a grift. I just wanted to talk to people. I just wanted a hobby. And that hobby is now turned practically into a life. So if you can help me, help you understand the news better, and who are the gatekeepers of certain truths, then please donate. If not me, then who? If not now, then when?
I'm a neo-reactionary absolutist. I believe in a absolute world order, organized a particular way.
When you're looking at a government, is a corporation that owns a country. It just is. It's the same thing.
I'm Peter Thiel. I support people who are building new things. I'm not a politician, but neither is Donald Trump. And it's time to rebuild America.
Anything we can do to help this go along, and we're going to be there for you. And you'll call my people, you'll call me. It doesn't make any difference. We have no formal chain of command.